Good afternoon. I request Mr. Indranand, CEO, Executive Vice President, Shiprocket, to take over the session. Thank you.
Sure, ma'am. So, a very well welcome to everybody out here. Like the panel that I have seen, like it's a very, very colorful bouquet of people with varied experience and stature in the industry that we have accumulated, and all thanks to the CII team out here. I am very, very much privileged to chair this session, and as considering myself, I would request कि कोई अगर भूल चूल हो जाए कुछ anything of that sort, थोड़ा माफ कर देना. Otherwise, I would try my best to chair the discussion with as much energy and enthusiasm as possible. So I would ask everybody, starting with Mr. Nagaraju sir, to introduce yourself to our audience and the panelists, and post that we'll move to the subsequent part of the discussions.
Okay, good afternoon. Thanks, Indranil, and thank you, Bhanumati and CA Institute of Logistics, for this opportunity to share some things on modern warehousing. My name is KB Nagaraju. I used to be the Chief Customer Officer and Chief Delivery Officer for Big Basket for the last nearly 9 years. Of late, post-Tata merger, I'm currently handling some special assignments with Tata Digital. I'm basically a mechanical engineer and an MBA from IIM Calcutta in 1985. And over the last nearly 38 years, I have worked mostly in supply chain and in multiple companies, starting with L&T, TVS, then a small stint in the Gulf and back in India with Compaq and HP, Lenovo. TVS Logistics was my last assignment. And for the last 8 years or 8+ years, I'm with Big Basket. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sushil, sir, if you could go ahead, please. Next.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sushil Rathi, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Mahindra Logistics, handling transportation and procurement. I'm also the Chief Executive Officer for Lords Freight India Private Limited, which is a freight forwarding subsidiary of Mahindra Logistics. I've been with the company for last 12 years. Prior to that, I had a stint with the Satyam Computers, Fiat India, and Premier Auto Limited. I'm basically a mechanical engineer and a postgraduate from NITI.
Thanks a lot, Sushil, sir. Sarwat, if you could please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Indranil. Thanks, Dr. Bhanumati, for this session. This is a very interesting session. So excited to be a part of it. I currently serve as the Chief Experience and Supply Chain Officer for Snapdeal, and been with the Snapdeal 2.0 from the inception. And before that, I was part of Flipkart for 5 years. And prior to that, I was a electronics engineer doing research and development work for General Electric Healthcare. And I was part of that organization for almost 8 years. So yeah, it has been 18 years of experience in supply chain and digital transformation. Looking forward to this discussion, and I'm excited for the discussion. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sarwat, and welcome to the team out here. Sanjeev Bhushan Rathi, my ex-colleague, can you please go ahead, please? Is Sanjeev there? I don't think Sanjeev has joined, right? Dr. Bhanumati, I don't think Mr. Sanjeev has joined, Sanjeev Rathi.
Okay, I'll revert.
Okay, cool. So, Mr. Ramkumar.
Hi, good afternoon all. My name is Ramkumar. I work as a Principal Program Manager for Swiggy's Instamart. I lead the supply chain charter end-to-end, right? I've been doing this for the past 2 years. And before that, I was associated with Cognizant primarily on the retail practice. My experience is almost like 80%, I would say my career is in retail and supply chain. So I worked with Walmart as a customer. I worked with PepsiCo, all the consumer goods retailers that you think. So pretty much my 80% of my career spans in retail and supply chain. And I'm an engineer by profession. So I did my BTech in IT. And then since then, I've been into this industry for about 2 decades now.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thanks again for the CI, Bhanumati, and everyone for giving this opportunity. Looking forward for an enjoyable discussion.
Absolutely. Virat, if you could go ahead, please.
Hi, hello everyone. First of all, I would like to thank everyone to giving me an opportunity to share a space with you all, the industry leaders. I'm Virat. I'm working with Zepto as a Senior Director of Operations. I am taking care of dark store operations and last mile, which is a customer-facing front. And I work with the company like Flipkart, ITC, and Future Group. So out and out supply chain guy. So core focus is towards the serving customer excellence. So this is where I belong to. Yeah, thank you all.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Virat. So from my side, I have interacted with a lot with Sushil sir and Nagaraju as a part of the panel before, right? And for the new people out here, I've mostly been with startups since my career, like a engineer, MBA, and then started my career with Kotak Mahindra Bank, and before that, engineering and 2 part. Then was part of Gupshup, Flipkart, Ola Cabs, the initial team built the Club Factory, was managing the Club Factory's India operations, heading the India operations, and now I am with Shiprocket since last, almost like 3.5 years now. It's $1.5 billion company right now. So awesome journey out there. So I am looking forward to a very, very interesting discussion today, and privileged to be a part of the team out here. Okay, so Mr. Nagaraju sir, I was supposed to give a presentation, right? If you could go ahead with the presentation, probably, and then probably we can go ahead with a little bit discussion on the kind of questionnaires that I would throw around the panel.
Okay, thank you very much. You guys are able to see my screen? Just start.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, okay. Once again, good afternoon, everyone, and who is on this panel, as well as all those who are logged in to listen to this afternoon discussion. Happy to be part of this. What I'm planning to do is a very quick run through on how this whole e-commerce and 3PL industry have really, acted as a main catalyst and drivers of modern warehousing in the country. So these are all my personal opinion. So let's see how it goes. 1 second. Yeah. So essentially, I'm going to talk about how this, the growth drivers for e-commerce itself in India, and then a little bit about supply chain flows in traditional retail e-commerce, and then what are the supply chain models emerging for e-commerce currently, including the much discussed, in-city quick commerce models, and then finally something about 3PL, how they have contributed, and also one quick look at what are the, how the whole modern warehousing is shaping up. So very quickly, the fundamentally, if you notice in the last 15 years, the main thing which has happened, which has completely touched all of us in supply chain, is the internet growth in India, as well as the mobile connectivity. Both these have acted as a huge fillip to the new businesses like e-commerce. And the other part is e-commerce also has kind of changed the consumers' demands and expectations in terms of multiple parameters. Whatever I mentioned there, people are looking at cost, price at a very, very affordable in the retail market. Earlier, they used to go and whatever is available, they used to buy. Now they are able to really get items at the right cost. And then there is a returns flexibility. And they're also looking for all items in a single platform if possible. Then expectations on delivery is also going up from next day delivery, same day delivery to 1 hour delivery. And more importantly, very reliable delivery, so that, over a period of time, people buying multiple items, they want to tie up with the e-commerce player who is more reliable. That is also important. Payment methods are also now they're all available. Earlier, you have to either pay cash or give a check, and until the cash is deposited in the company's account, you won't get your order shipped out. But those things have completely are history. And finally, there is a lot of loyalty programs also which are driving consumer behavior. Now, when you look at it, actually, apart from the consumer, the other two aspects, one is the government itself has created huge amount of digitization across various supply chain infrastructure, whether it is ports or whether it is telecom and all that. And national logistics policy recently announced. And digital payments, UPI, this has been a story which is unheard of anywhere in the world, actually. And coming to the technology side also, all those people who are on this panel, we can all remember how it was even 15 years back. Now we have all the best technology which is available to support supply chain to remove all those frictional aspects. So with all this, what is happening is the e-commerce market, which has started maybe around 2007, 8, 9, and so on, is really very, very robustly growing in India. And FY20, 2 years, just COVID year, it was about 35 billion. And it's expected to go up to 132 billion. This is only the retail I'm talking about, retail e-commerce. And if you notice, the compared to the retail market, the e-commerce market is expected to actually go up to 26, 27%, with almost a 9% penetration across the entire business. And if you look at the categories also, electronics has always been one of the top categories, then followed by fashion and others. But the interesting thing is pharma and grocery is also growing very fast. Now, this is the e-commerce growth, right? Now, what does it mean in terms of supply chain? Traditional supply chain always been like this. You have the product manufacturer, and then there's a distributor, then it goes to wholesaler, retailer, and finally the end customer actually goes to a shop or somewhere, and then he buys it himself. He looks at the product, he decides it has the right quality, and he pays then and there and takes the product. Whereas if you look at in the e-commerce, the business flow is a little different. All the product manufacturers actually deliver to the retailer, who is the e-commerce player, right? So the balance of power has shifted from the manufacturer to retailers in some sense. And the e-commerce player then, of course, has this network of mother DCs, regional DCs, and then finally it gets delivered to the end customer. Now the end customer is getting the product at his home. He looks at the product and then he figures out what is the quality. And of course, for all standard packaged products, quality should not be an issue. But however, there are enough processes available on the return flow also. And the other aspect, more fundamental aspects of e-commerce compared to traditional brick and mortar retail is basically e-commerce works around the clock. People can place orders around the clock. And then the reach is very wide. Wherever internet is there, anybody can place an order, provided the e-commerce player is ready to supply there. And the other important thing actually is the expectation of delivery is much faster. Whereas in the case of traditional brick and mortar, while a customer can go and buy, but if we were to expect it in a different way, then the delivery aspect is not confirmed, or even the availability is not really confirmed. You can only buy whatever is available. Whereas in the case of e-commerce, the model itself is such that there is a high availability and high fill rates. So, and the second aspect is it is delivered to your home. And then, as I already said, the expectation of the consumer is actually for faster and faster deliveries. The other thing is compared to a traditional retail, the number of SKUs which are available on e-commerce platform are many, many times more. So the huge amount of range. So consumer is now spoiled for choice and the variety and certain products which he may never have seen or experienced. So that's a kind of availability of variety which is there in the e-commerce industry. Now, all these points have got a definite implication for warehousing. We'll see that subsequently. So warehousing for e-commerce is essentially around 4 ways, if you look at it, depending upon the speed requirements. People are now moving from fulfillment centers to dark stores and then delivering it within 2 to 3 kilometers. That is the quick commerce kind of a model. Then you have the normal model, which many companies like Big Basket use, which is delivering in about 10 kilometers radius, again using dark stores, but with slotted deliveries and so on. That is for fast moving items. Then you have items which are kept maybe in a city or in a zone and which are typically delivered the next day kind of a thing. And then you also have very long tail SKUs, which may be stored only nationally in 1 or 2 places, and which may take actually more than 2 days for delivery. Many e-commerce companies have all these models, or most of these models, I can say. And of course, the SKU assortment is also varies. For the first case, less than 1 hour delivery, which is now covered, is quite popular, 30 minutes or less. The SKUs could be as about maybe 1,500, 2,000, whereas in a typical slotted deliveries, the assortment can go up to 6,000 to 10,000. And of course, beyond that, those are all slow moving and long tail items. There are a number of models based on the fundamental 4 models. Again, if you really look at it, if you go into the detail, there are more models available, including where items are stocked by the at the mother DC. Sometimes it may be coming through JIT model. Then you also have B2B model available on the e-commerce platforms, right? Again, you have marketplace models. And then, of course, finally, you have the hyper-local models as well, right? And the last one is even the Kirana-based delivery model, which some of the people are following, where the item is left at the nearest Kirana, and that guy delivers directly to the end customer. So, and of course, these are all various brands which are there, popular. They are using multiple models. This is just to give a. Now, coming to the 3PLs, while e-commerce has started maybe around 2007, 8 or so, if you really look at 3PLs have been there in the country even from much earlier. In my background, I can remember from 1996, 97. I think 3PL as a nomenclature got used, started getting used in India, and then you had some of the smaller, bigger players, and then of course the MNCs getting into it. The main advantage of 3PLs, who have brought it to the warehousing scenario or supply chain in general, is obviously they are able to handle the warehousing and all the related processes much better, because they know how to handle that portion of it very well, like a specialized warehousing and distribution partners. Of course, they offer cost optimization also. And then because of the very fact they are highly process driven, they also brought in a lot of tech into whether it is a WMS or TMS and so on. And there are also multiple business models that they were able to give, costless model or variable model or a mix of both and so on. And finally, to the either to an e-commerce player or to even a product manufacturer, the advantage was that if a 3PL was ready with certain facilities, then you can get started in a new market pretty fast. Those are some of the advantages. And the contracts with 3PLs were always such that, a lot of reliability, and then was built in the metrics based management and reviews, quarterly business reviews. All these are very, very systematically brought into the overall warehousing operations and monitoring to provide a much better this one to the end customer. And of course, all of these also have implications for warehousing as well. If I have to summarize whatever I said on e-commerce and this one, these are the things which really come up. From an e-commerce point of view, it is actually B2C, huge number of orders. So for outbound becomes important, huge number of SKUs, storage areas needs to be designed, variety of SKUs I already talked about. So some may require high value storage, cold storage, and so on. Marketplace buying means you need to have a QC built in. And then coming to the customer orders, most of them are single pick or small orders. So your storage methods, packaging becomes important. Large volume of orders, so complexity in outbound, you may have to have some sortation and so on. It is a 24/7. And apart from that, because of the size of the operations and these are all very large warehouses outside the cities and so on, you also end up with a lot of new workforce, migrant workforce, and therefore recruitment, training, catering areas within the warehouse become very important. And because of the fact these are large warehouses, there is a possibility to use alternate sources of energy to reduce the overall cost of operation. And of course, the EV and other emerging vehicles, etc., also need special charging stations within the warehouses. Another important thing is, which is slowly happening in India, even in Big Basket, we have a sizable 10% of the workforce who are women employees. So we need to make sure the warehouse also caters to all their special needs. And I already talked about 3PLs because of the very fact that they are able to offer a good utilization of their warehouses. They typically operate in a multi-client facility. Therefore, the warehouses need to be modular and yet provide independent operations to the end customers. And because of the fact 3PLs manage the inventory, while the inventory is in the books of the product owner, typically the inventory management is much stricter in 3PL. Otherwise, they will be ending up with certain clauses and then penalties. Cost focus is always there. And the best practices they bring from around the world. Key metrics in e-commerce. This is something I wanted to say. This also has a very clear major focus on the way the warehousing needs to be made. One is availability, which means quick receiving is important. Fill rate. So locations, planograms, faster receiving, picking, all these things will directly impact the fill rates. And of course, the on-time delivery, which means order to ship is a very important criterion, and the fast outbound. So when you look at the whole host of things, this naturally means, this slide would definitely mean that the warehousing has to be absolutely of different quality. And this is where I just wanted to present a small picture. You can see a typical large, maybe a 2 lakh, 3 lakh square feet, large warehouse, modern warehouse. You can see the racking and storage is there in the left side middle, whereas there is a lot more areas for QC, B2C, picking and packing, primary sorting, outbound sorting, and finally staging areas. The interesting fact is, even 15, 20 years ago, a typical warehouse layout would show more of storage. I mean, up to 60, 70% storage and 30% for, including inbound and outbound. Whereas this whole thing is now flipping actually. You have storage, all right, but that may be only 40, 50%. But you need a lot more space for actually other activities. So therefore, I can say the warehouses are more and more fulfillment purpose rather than for storage purpose. There's a busy slide. I might slightly skip it, but basically what this says again is the focus areas for warehousing have become far different of late. I already mentioned in the previous slide, but again, just to pick up a few, technology is very important. I think there is a separate session post this, I can see. And then you need to have the ability to scale very, very quickly. So the entire racking mechanisms or whatever, and then mezzanines, and then mechanization, all these things, automation, which are even 10, 15 years ago were not possible in India because of this low level of scale and also the investments. All these things are becoming possible in Indian warehousing infrastructure. And secondly, of course, there is a lot of focus on environment-friendly infrastructure, charging, I already talked about, and solar panels and so on. This is again, if I were to show this picture even 6, 7 years ago, people won't believe, but these are all actually now available in some of the large warehouses of some of the brands which I already talked about, whether it is, Amazon or Flipkart or even Delivery and DB Shankar and so on. So all these storage systems and special automated systems are all being thought of and being implemented in multiple warehouses across the country in order to make sure that you're able to have a high level of throughput and improve the fulfillment accuracy and volumes. Again, on the outbound side, I mean, some of you may know about it, but just for reference, sorting mechanisms. Once again, this becomes very important because if you are catering to multiple zones and pin codes and all that, and the single item being ordered by customers, ends up with more than sometimes it can even be 40,000-50,000 outbound items from a single warehouse in a particular day. So you need to necessarily have systems to sort them in a very, very systematic way using automation to ensure that you are able to hand it over to the outbound vehicles or 3PL logistics players pretty fast. Who are the players? E-commerce players, you all know. I'll skip that. 3PL players, yes, these are some of the emerging big 3PL players who are able to provide good quality warehousing, as well as, of course, the other value-added services. What is important is the third column, where we are now seeing in the last 1 decade, or a little less than a decade, quite a few of warehousing infrastructure makers, who are getting into making infrastructure for warehouses in large logistics parks, and then they hand it over to either, lease them out to e-commerce players or 3PL players, right? And this is some very welcome development which has happened. It is also being supported by good investment coming from both foreign institutional investors as well as domestic big companies, Wellspun being one example. Government also was there earlier, like Central Warehousing Corporation has always been there last 20-25 years. But then, of course, they are more like they provide the space, but not necessarily the kind of infrastructure that e-commerce players are looking at. But however, I would like to say that Central Warehousing Corporation is also changing, and they are also willing to provide space to e-commerce players, especially since they are located within the cities. In many large cities, they are provided. They have their operation warehousing infrastructure within the city. So the e-com players are able to take space from them and then convert them into a high throughput fulfillment centers. The last point I want to talk about today is the in-city warehousing. Typically, warehousing is always thought about as something which is in the outskirts of the city, and but however, with the new business models that are being championed by some of the youngsters who may be on this panel as well, the quick commerce, and these have created actually some needs which customer himself may not have known whether I never believed that I needed grocery in 10 minutes. More and more people are happy if somebody is providing such a facility, right? And similarly, e-commerce as a principle is being supported even by government. FDIs and some of the local big companies are also investing in quick commerce and other models, including dark store kind of model to provide maybe, if not 10-15 minute delivery, but at least same day deliveries. No, there is a huge focus on this now. No, but then what are the challenges? The challenges are obviously high rentals. There is nothing called really warehousing available within the city. So you have to make do with some concrete structures which are made for some other purpose, but you have to retrofit your warehousing infrastructure within that. Then there is always a problem of where you need a dark store, but where is it available? There's an availability mismatch. The other thing is no entry guidelines, parking facility for bikers and small vans to come. There are also legal compliance issues on the property itself. And finally, if you're going to create an infrastructure which is going to be running round the clock in a residential area, you need to take community support as well, which can also become an issue going forward. However, I think this model is becoming robust. Quite a few people are growing very fast. And then along with grocery, with which it started, is also now spreading to few other adjacent areas, including maybe pharma and a few other things. And overall, I think the customers will be getting benefited. So my take is that if not 10, 15 minutes, 30-minute delivery with hyperlocal is going to continue into the future. I think that, I believe, is my last slide, just to give an overall on how e-commerce has grown and what are the drivers for e-commerce and where we are, and therefore what are the implications for warehousing, similarly 3PL side, and what are the kind of warehouses we have, including the last mile, in-city warehousing. I think I'll stop at this, and I'm looking forward to a wonderful discussion with.
Thanks a lot, Mr.
To Indranil, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Mr. Nagaraj. It was quite informative, right? I would request you, if you could, if feasible, if you could share the handout to everybody out here in the team. They would be really,
Yeah, I will send it. I'll send it to CIA. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks a lot. So let me start the discussion. So I have gone through the profile of each of the person, and I thought that there would be a few questionnaires which would probably direct the discussions. And obviously, it does not restrict the discussion in that sense, in a way, but it is more of a direction and the pathway how the discussion can revolve around the issues which we face with the warehousing in the recent. With respect to recent development out here, and considering the kind of profiles that we have of the people out here in the panel. So let me start first of all with what's happening, the new age of commerce, the direct to consumer. As I have also been part of Shiprocket, right? I have seen journeys of B2C commerce in my past, like 3 to 4 years kind of a thing. I have seen organizations like Mama, for example, growing from a minuscule volume to becoming the behemoth that it is currently. And I have seen the kind of challenges that have been through, right? A D2C organization probably starts with a cost of logistics to as high as, which could be as high as 25 to 30%, and tries to bring down it to the average level of say 10 to 12% over a period of its maturity, right? So that's a big challenge, right? What happens is that in a small D2C organization, they start small, right? So they start small, they start shipping from a single place for pan India. They are not able to distribute inventory, so that compromises their speed to consumer, and also that compromises their cost of logistics, because as they are not nearer to the customers, they take a longer route, and hence obviously the cost of logistics is much higher. So when it comes to D2Cs, which has been a phenomenon since last 2 to 3 years in India, I have seen in China, when I was there in China for quite a long time, I have seen how Chinese brand dictate the market, right? Which was very much unlike India in the 2017 and 18 phase, right? Or if I take a shoe brand, if top 5 shoe brands in China were the Chinese brand. If I take the chocolate market, the top 10 players in the Chinese brand ecosystem were the Chinese homegrown chocolate brands, right? Very unlike in India, which we have 2 or 3 brands out here, Mondelez or whatsoever, dictating the market. Hence, I always believe that D2C had a very, very huge scope in India. But when it comes to D2C, is one of the biggest challenge for any growing D2C player is how to control the cost of logistics and how to ensure the speed of delivery, right? I would like the panel, I start with Sarwar for that. How does he see the industry of late, and how does he see the industry in the next 5 years, and what would be his suggestion in terms of a small D2C company starting up, say, for example, in Chennai, and wants to ship pan-India across all the tiers of cities? How would he recommend those company or consult or suggest that company to create a path with respect to his cost of logistics and his warehousing strategy? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thanks, Indranil. That's a very big question, so I'll try to take a stab at it. See, I think the way, as you said, D2C is growing. One of the important factors for any brand to grow is also their service, right? the kind of service quality that they provide to their customers, and the kind of financials that they have in terms of the fulfillment cost, and the margins for them being able to sustain that kind of a growth, right? So on both the factors, when it comes to service quality, I think service quality today is defined by a reliable, predictable service experience, right? And with many of the e-commerce companies, the way they have proliferated their warehouses and the way they've done their network design, today fulfillment has become max to max a matter of 2 to 3 days, right? And hence, if there is a small brand somewhere which needs to compete with the likes of those companies, it becomes extremely difficult for them and cost prohibitive to be able to do something like that, right? And hence we have seen the likes of Shiprocket and many other companies who are coming up with end-to-end solutions for all these small players. Now, these small players, if they really want to do and expand their business, it's not at all efficient or effective for them to be able to do that. But once you tag along with a service provider who's having multiple such players working with them, and they have the economies of scale, helping them to actually plan their network, do the entire distribution, do the entire supply chain functions for them, it makes a lot more sense for them to be able to piggyback on that network and start the growth journey, right? So one of the things that I'm seeing probably is needed, and is also something that is slowly growing, but it still hasn't caught up that much, is the unification of supply chain platforms, right? Today, I think one of the biggest area of driving these efficiencies and service qualities would be if we have a common platform which everyone can use, right? The moment you have a common platform that ties up the entire system together, we may start seeing the economies of scale kicking in a lot more effectively, and we may also see that the ease of operations and the SLAs to meet the required customer expectations would also start becoming a lot better. So yeah, I mean, it's a journey. I think the ecosystem is growing right now. We have players who are doing. Someone is doing a very, very, very good job on warehousing. Someone is doing a very good job on the last mile. Someone is doing a good job on distribution networks. But yeah, I mean, if you look at an end-to-end solution, is there an end-to-end service provider that gives that kind of a end-to-end service to someone? Yes, I mean, there are very few names who are picking up and trying to build their network and do that. But along with building the network, I also feel the technology aspect of that needs to be simplified further for a D2C brand who wants to actually grow his brand and not worry about the delivery and the distribution and the returns and all of that, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm sorry for the long answer. The question was quite big, so that's what I think.
Indranil, can I add something to what Kanchan has mentioned?
Absolutely, sir. I was just coming to you. Yeah. Please go ahead, sir.
So obviously, as the name itself suggests, the D2C is where you're trying to actually cut the middleman and reaching to your customers directly. Today in India, almost like there are more than 800 brands which are D2C selling brands, which we can talk about. Now, there are categories which are growing faster, and there are categories which are catching up. So the largest category, of course, at this juncture is grocery and gourmet, and followed by apparel, footwear, then electronics, personal care, etc. There are other things which are very prominent in the D2C sector. The bigger challenge, I think, what these companies face is what you started with. How do they really quickly grow? Because when you're a D2C brand, typically it has been seen that you take roughly 3 to 5 years to even reach up to a scale of, say, 100 crore. And which is not a big thing in today's world where, people want to expand fast and you want to expand and you want to also do the break even much, much faster. One of the thing which one has to rely on is, tying up with a logistics player which has a pan-India network. You require, as Kanchan also mentioned, you require the warehousing capability and you require the last mile delivery capability. And I think the companies which have looked into the logistics aspect very, very carefully, apart from creating the brand and getting a nice product itself, is companies who are actually able to grow in a profitable manner. And this is where I think new concepts which are going to emerge even in the warehousing is, so many of these players, because of their size, etc., will not be able to have an exclusive kind of tie-up. So they need to look at a multi-user kind of a setup. And the concept which we are, even at Mahindra Logistics, what we are promoting today is pay-per-use kind of thing, so that, the cost doesn't really balloon for them, and they can, whatever they are using, they pay only for that portion and keep it at the minimum. But idea is, while optimizing the costs, give them a good reach, so that they can really ramp up much faster. So I think that is something which is very important, which I wanted to highlight.
Thanks a lot, sir. Yeah, sure.
Then I'd like to add maybe one point. So one thing is, in these D2C brands in the current world, my take is you don't have to solve the entire supply chain problem yourself, because I think Sarvatna aptly pointed out, you have niche players everywhere. You have niche players in last mile, you have niche players in warehousing. So for example, if I have to build my own D2C site, I can always rope in a last mile delivery player like a delivery or fulfilled by Amazon. Amazon provides a fulfillment FBS, right? Fulfillment by Amazon. So that gives you a predictable or in terms of delivery or in terms of service. So I don't have to solve all the problems in delivery supply, D2C supply chain. So my core focus, say for example, I'll have to give a wide variety of assortments to the entire world. I can focus only on that, and everything else I outsource to the niche players already available in the market who has a pan-India reach. Right? So that's also another way to look at in terms of solving the core challenges, or what is your core challenge in terms of solving for D2C. And remaining everything, there are already players out there who have already solved the problems for you.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Just expanding this discussion further, right? As I've seen the D2C, one of the biggest challenge the D2C, a small D2C face is probably they start with, say, a warehouse in Delhi, right? And as they are not there across, at least in the top 3 or 5 cities, with respect to their inventory in the warehousing, they take a lot of time to reach to their customers, and the cost of logistics is also. So that's one part of the problem that I see for a small D2C growing up to the mature stage, right? The other part of the problem for a mature D2C, which I have seen in the market, is when they go to the market and compete with the big established players like a P&G or a Hindustan Lever, right? And it's basically the modern trade and the general trade ecosystem, right? Because the space there is limited, right? It's high price real estate. All the rack space have already been covered by all these biggies out there, and they do not have access to the kind of rack space, and hence there is no visibility of the customers when the customer goes there. And they are under the 3rd or 4th kind of a prioritization. So one of the way these guys are looking to overcome this is obviously doing the omnichannel part of it, and having their inventory placed nearby to the customers, right? And through the D2C model, they have the digital part of it nearby to the customers, and the customers have a feeling that even if I'm not going to a store like a DMart to purchase it for a particular product like a XYZ or heads up sales kind of product, I can go to the digital space and I can order it and I can get it in the next 2 to 3 hours, right? Coming to the discussion of how D2Cs merge or evolve into a more matured warehousing, fulfillment, and last mile logistics with the quick commerce coming into the picture, I would like to throw this discussion to Mr. Ramkumar to understand how can these D2Cs, and specifically D2Cs coming into the home and beauty, which are very high repeat purchases, and obviously the food category, again, a very high repeat purchase kind of a environment. How would they like to explore this scenario? Because the cost of logistics, as I understand, and the cost of fulfillment when it comes to quick commerce is too high for them. In a normal kind of a setup, a multi-city kind of a warehouse, they can trim it down to almost, say, around 12-13% kind of an efficiency, right? But as soon as they go into the hyperlocal mode, the cost balloons to almost 30-35% at present, right? And coming back to what Sarwat said, right? Unification of the supply chain, right? A single platform or a single player whereby small D2Cs can fit in both from their the product getting into a single supply chain platform and a single infrastructure bringing in the economies of scale, right? What would be your suggestions and your vision and your way forward for this kind of this system?
So traditionally, we have seen in the last 10 minutes, right? If you look at all of the retailers or D2C, any brands, B2C, we've started with very large warehousing, right? Assuming that we will have warehousing at the outskirts of city, and then we will do a network hub and spoke model, and then ship products to the consumers. Now, with all this hyper-local in place, the size of the warehouse is also shrunk, right? We are now calling it as a micro-fulfillment centers. We don't have a warehousing as such per se. We have micro-fulfillment centers at maybe within the city itself. So the cost of building a micro-fulfillment center is little lesser when you try to build a 2 lakh square feet of a larger warehouse, right? Because you want to have the customer, we want to have the products closer to the customers. So any D2C brand who want to be in a closer reach to customers can look at building a micro-fulfillment centers rather than building a warehouse, where you have a milk run orders, like a repeat purchases, right? So you replenish orders every overnight, because when you have a dark store model, you roughly have around 1,200 SKUs per month, per day. And you replenish almost 80% of it on daily basis. So that's where the capital becomes lesser when you start small. And then it becomes easy for you to scale also when you look at whether there is a market that exists for that particular D2C brand. And because that is, supply chain is extremely capital intensive, right? So you have to invest a lot of capital, and then to build those warehouses and then bring in those automation stuff to bring in more efficiency. So when you look at D2C, I mean, these days are all completely like per hour delivery, right? So you don't, somebody said like maybe the next day delivery is going to be a thing of past in next 2-3 years. So nobody is going to expect a next day delivery after 5 years. Everything is going to be within an hour, right, Max? So if that's the case, then your overall business model will change, and it is changing now if you see. So micro fulfillment centers is one option where you have products closer to the reach. And second interesting aspect, which I have seen, is how do you reduce the cost of inventory, right? The cost of finished goods. I mean, it's not only groceries, right? Because I read one of the interesting patents from Amazon. So what they're saying is you use the tech to build the inventory, right? So for example, let's say you have a faulty tap or faulty faucet at your home. So you typically order it in your D2C brand or a B2C Amazon or a Flipkart. So then it signals to your supplier, or if you have a stock already in place, you ship it. It typically takes maybe a day or two. But with the help of 3D printing, you can use the specs to create the faucet or the tap on the fly, right? With the help of 3D printer, and ship it to the customer house, right? Within like maybe hours. So that's a zero cost of maintaining my finished goods. So I maintain only the raw materials. I don't maintain the finished goods per se. So that is, you cannot apply this concept for all, SKUs, maybe consumer durables to some extent, hard lines to some extent, you can use this. So these are some of the places where definitely, yes, there are technology involved in can shape, right, the delivery or the perception of consumer demand.
I just want to add, I just want to add about what Ram has said. So I think the core perspective around this whole model is revolving around the data, which is the most important thing right now, because we have a lot of data available to find out the customer insights, and then creating a segmentation wherein which product customer would want in half an hour, which product customer may be okay to get in one day, right? So accordingly, those designs or the segmentation would define the overall network which has to be built around it. And then eventually, what would this give a clarity to the customer that, okay, I know that this particular product, I would need another 15-20 minutes that is available. See, with this available data, you can clearly chalk out what could be my supply chain design. And this is where the 3PL partner should also think over that, what could be the upcoming demands through which this will happen. And like he mentioned that after 5 years, like it's said that customer would want everything within, let's say, half an hour or 30 minutes. Yeah, one day delivery will be a past thing, which is eventually right, because if I have to order mobile, I would expect that mobile should be within my hand within 3 hours or 4 hours, right? Whereas maybe the clothes I can wait for a couple of days. So those segmentation would definitely define the warehousing network as well as the supply chain of the logistics last mile network. How my last mile should behave, and this overall consideration, which eventually forces. So what I can see is the bigger thing which will happen in upcoming years is the last mile piece and the logistics piece, because I think on certain parameters we have actually evolved a lot in terms of warehousing. I'm saying that from the fact that what used to happen almost 10 years ago, but still there is a lot of scope in terms of automation. But yeah, last mile or logistics will be a key area where people should be focusing on. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Viraj. So coming back to Sushil sir and Nagaraju sir, again, considering Nagaraju sir has the core experience in Big Basket, I would like to take this discussion from back to my experience. Like what I have seen, a lot of D2C brands coming into the food category. And when it comes to the consumer side of it, and B2C side of the business, unlike the B2B part of the chain, the cold chain, the cold ecosystem which is required either at the micro fulfillment center or into the last mile part of it does not exist currently in India, right? When it comes to specifically B2C, until unless a big guy like a Big Basket builds it on its own, right, by investing a lot of money, right, which is not feasible for the small guys building some food product like an Epigamia or a Listius kind of a thing. How do you feel a D2C company into the food segment? And I'll start with Ramanaju sir. What would be your suggestion? So if they are specifically into a food category which needs cold chain support, they want to get into the micro fulfillment centers, be nearer to the customers, have the last mile which has a sustainable cold model of operations to deliver the product in the way it is supposed to be. What would be your suggestions for those kind of companies? I'll start with Nagaraju sir.
Yeah, actually speaking, if we really look at it, D2C brands which require certain amount of cold storage have always existed. I thought, like you look at one is you mentioned about Epigamia, but then you always had these ice creams and you had many other things. And then I really do not see the only important point. Because for a D2C brand to reach a customer, no, if you are saying whether how they should reach through an e-commerce channel, or your question is general in terms of whether how they can really reach the the end customer, right?
Yeah, my question is in the sense, like, unlike a bigger organizations like a Big Basket, which has built its own chain by deploying a lot of investment and cash into the network, right? For a small guy, it's very difficult because there is no open pay-per-use kind of a platform for a small amount of inventory to be stored across different cities, right? For a small player.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, but then that is where I think they can ride on the bigger e-commerce players. For example, Big Basket, we ourselves support quite a lot of smaller brands, whether they require cold chain or not, through our what do you call? We have these brand assistance programs, right? Accelerators and so on. So where we are supporting some of these brands which required cold chain also. Amazon does it, for example. I know for sure they do it. So there are platforms currently, in my opinion, which are already available, which can which D2C brands can very well use. So that's my opinion. So I do not think it is such a big challenge. Like one of the persons said earlier, if you really break this supply chain into various elements, right, where you have to store at some place, then you have to deliver to end customer, using a last mile delivery network or something. There are niche players available for each of these supply chain on a use paper distribution or paper inventory. So they are available, and such models are also coming on board very, very fast. So I think it is emerging, this segment of how we can build or help smaller D2C brands is something, is an interesting challenge, which is, I think, is already emerging, and there are some portions of solutions available. That's my opinion.
Thanks a lot. Coming back to the Sushil sir, right? I'll take the same question to the Sushil sir. So a smaller D2C brand, a few examples out there, have two kind of choices, right? Either they list their products in a bigger platform, say in Instamart or a big basket, and obviously that's a different kind of a strategy, and that's probably not very D2ish in that kind of a scenario. But for a brand which likes to have its essence as a D2C, right, direct to consumer, without being in a marketplace, and wants to have that kind of an infrastructure at a cost which is viable for him, right? What would be your suggestion? What would be his approaches in terms of getting to his customers directly at cost which is sustainable for him?
So Indranil, answer is very clear. Obviously, any small brand will use, first of all, a larger platform, whether an e-commerce platform or a digital other platform or a subscription service, etc., to reach out to their customer. They will not have wherewithal to actually go bang on their own completely, etc. So probably they will try and leverage. Having said that, even the other D2C brand, which probably has become a little larger size, etc., and they want to be on their own, idea for them will be, which I mentioned earlier, and I think in some manner Nagaraju sir also mentioned, is we need to identify with a player who can offer us pay-per-use kind of services. And that is something which I think these people need to really push very hard and really align with those providers who can give them a reach as well as give them a pay-per-use kind of facility. See, the whole game is changing. Today, we are one of the largest player even in e-commerce platform. We service Amazon, Flipkart, etc., all kind of companies. And majority of my contracts are on a variable pricing mode. So even when those platforms are using those kind of channel, obviously we have the capability then to offer it to even a small player also. So multi-user warehousing, pay-per-use kind of facility, and even a sharing of last mile services, etc., is the key to the success for those people. As simple as that.
Got it, sir. Thanks a lot. So just expanding the discussion to the manpower part, right? And I understand we are all from the industry, and we understand how, at the end of the day, whatsoever technology, whatsoever jing bang out there we discuss, it's a very, very human thing in supply chain, at least in India, right? And all those kind of noises we see on social media, things not reaching or breaking down or some defective stuff reaching, is at the end of the day some human defect at some point of time. So workforce management, one of the probably most important thing. And when it comes to e-commerce, the most important thing in e-commerce is the cyclic or a very, very erratic way of how e-commerce sales happens, right? Spike sometimes to the extent of like 5, 6, 10x, and sometimes it comes down to almost like 1/10 of what it used to be of that spike, right? And hence the dynamicity of the manpower in the industry. How do you see as a fulfillment service provider, as a warehousing service provider? How do you see this part evolving into something more structured with better workforce planning, better hygiene for the employees, right? And so that this kind of fluctuations in e-commerce industry, specifically in festival seasons and all, can be taken care in a much more better and human way. I would start with Sarvat, and then I'll go to Virat and Ramkumar for this part.
Yeah, I mean, it's my favorite topic actually that you asked me the question. See, I feel the workforce planning or the workforce management is a second level of problem. The first level of problem is the creation of quality workforce, right? And I think it's an entire mindset that needs to change. Still in India, these jobs are not looked as the jobs of choice, right? Probably a service job is looked at as a better job, which is a low paying job, than a delivery job, because people feel that last mile mein hum delivery kar rahe hai, what is it, right? So I think or हम warehousing में picking कर रहे हैं, right? So these jobs today are not looked at as jobs which are kind of jobs of choice. These are not looked at jobs which people are skilled to do, right? There are institutions, there are communities that are kind of training workforce and training manpower, but we need to have much more structural programs to be able to create this workforce for us, right? And make it an option, make it a job of choice for people. Now, once you have a trained and skilled manpower coming on board, and you have made it a job of choice, generally the demand supply, taking the seasonal factors out, should match, right? And you should be able to plan better. But the moment you start seeing the seasonal factors kicking in, I think one of the things that we all have to understand over a period of time, I think we have also understood, we are trying to do it much better than how we did it back in 2014s and 15s when we did the first big billions and all of that, is today we have understood that kind of a spike creation in the overall supply chain is not healthy. One, from the overall customer experience perspective, and secondly also from an employee's perspective, because what you're doing in essence is you're scaling up the entire organization to manage that 5 days of spike, and then you have to scale it down, right? So you, in order to create that kind of a spike, it becomes extremely difficult. Now, I was attending another session sometime back where I was asked the same question. I said, see, if we can provide vocational training institutes and we have students who are pursuing this as a full-time course, right? And when such spikes come, we also plan on the job, on the ground trainings, right? For these students, we can create those fundamental structures which can provide you with that workforce for that period. And then you are able to very cleanly take them off. And in the long run, they also get absorbed in the overall ecosystem, right? Because they have been trained, they know now how to do the job. Because one of the very important things is also training of this manpower. I think today, the way a warehousing executive gets onboarded, it takes at least a week of training for that guy to be able to get on board and start the work in a warehouse, right? Now, if these are people who are already trained by institutes and we can fast track their onboarding process, even that kind of creates a lot of planning related efficiencies that you may see. So I think it's a much more deep rooted problem. To cut the long short answer short, we need to start all the way from making this a job of choice, first of all, for people, creating the talent pool for these kind of jobs, vocational trainings institutes that create this kind of a manpower, to actually go all the way and being able to plan for seasonality in conjunction with the ecosystem that is building this manpower. So that would start giving you that kind of a flexibility that you need in terms of managing the spikes and all.
Got it. So I like views from Virat and Ramkumar as a user of services, right? From a perspective, right? And then probably I'll go to Sushil sir, who is a provider of services from this part of it, right? Virat, if you could help me with your.
And first of all, I'll completely agree with what Sarwat said. I mean, this is one of the important factor in supply chain, which is very close to my heart also, because I usually refer this as a human touch, right? So this is one piece which is happening right now that, so workforce management in overall scenario, if I look from the perspective that how people are getting employed into this warehousing industry, and so if you'll see the scale also which has happened, I mean, BBD times, you will see, I mean, almost lakhs of people are getting hired and they're getting trained, right? So a responsibility which is like, so this would require a lot of, let's say, a lot of private and public sectors to come forward and then provide the trainings to these manpower. This is one of the important factor which is required. Now, another piece, let's say, for example, I have to ramp up for my sale or the seasonality, right? So within that time, do I need to have a learning curve of 7 days, which Sarvad also mentioned, right? Or is it possible to, because these variabilities actually run the business, right? And during that time, this workforce management plays an important role. So overall scenario should be like that. There should be a complete availability of resources in a manner so that they are plug and play kind of scenarios for us. Number two is that how we can ensure that the training is happening at a fast scale so that we are ready to maintain the variability over there. The third piece, which I, from the perspective of we being the at a side where we are using the services on that front, I think this manpower front becomes the input for any type of business right now, especially in supply chain, where we are a lot of dependent on the last mile piece. We are dependent on the warehousing, where services which are required, right? So overall, if my planning is on the right foot, right, and this planning is actually the right input of my manpower to manage all the variabilities. So that's why this workforce management becomes so much important. Another piece I want to touch is because Sarvat was mentioning, sorry, I'm taking a little longer time because this is a really good topic about it, that particularly these people, they are getting importance from this factor, right? So getting them educated on this front, that right now, we always talk about the specialities, right? Whether it is tech, non-tech, or engineering, right? But this particular field is one field which should be taken up by the public sector also, wherein there should be provisions for the training with respect to these areas. And I think maybe Sushil sir and Nagaraju sir can also mention that, because they are at that front wherein they are actually training a lot of workforce and providing those services. Yeah, so I think this is one of the key factor or the backbone, I would say, of a supply chain right now, considering the level of skills which we are handling right now.
Thanks a lot. So coming back to Sushil sir, right? You being the provider of services, right? How do you see, like, and on one part we have the Skill India part of it, the Government of India effort and all, right? And then the other part is how we are bringing people from Jharkhand or Ranchi or Bihar kind of things, bringing them on a platter, giving them the training and putting them on the job floor, right? That's a huge issue. And there could be a lot where we can do, right, with respect to using technologies out here, a virtual reality kind of an environment, a gamification kind of an environment, providing that kind of a training on the go and make them live on the job floor in, say, 1 or 2 days, and making them more productive, right? What would be your view as an end provider of service in this segment?
Okay. So let me break it into two parts. One is a workforce which we require on an ongoing basis. Okay. So for example, we are launching a new warehouse, etc. We might require, say, 200 odd people on a regular basis. And those are the people which we, select properly, train them, onboard them, and then make sure that they learn on the job, and then they pick up the various threads from there onwards. The other challenge which I think was being discussed was in terms of ramp up and ramping down of the manpower for peaks, especially in case of the e-commerce industry, and to some extent, very small extent, sometimes it happens in FMCG towards the month end, etc., where you will have much larger loads moving out, etc. But predominantly, this phenomena is more e-commerce oriented. And that is where I think is a big challenge. I won't say these jobs are easy, because you need to balance between the two things. How early can you bring manpower to train them, and how you will still optimize the cost, because you are again you are on a per piece basis, etc., with your OEMs, with your e-commerce players, etc. So that is always a big challenge, a dilemma in our mind in terms of how do we manage. But when you want the productivity and when you want the service levels to be maintained, etc., you need to train them properly. Another big challenge which comes is knowing very well that this manpower will be ramped down, let's say, over a period of 3 weeks or 4 weeks, etc., how do you keep them motivated? It's not very easy. A person who knows that he's there only for 15 days, 20 days, or 30 days, what do you do with them? So that they still remain motivated and continue to give the right services, etc. So we do couple of things. One, of course, we try and see that because now over a period of a year or so, there'll be 3, 4, 5 peaks, and then different e-commerce player may have some staggered, etc. So we try and see that the manpower which has been trained, can we bring them back again? So we give them a first right of coming back to us in terms of any new peaks, etc., which is happening. Benefit to us is that they are already trained. Secondly, benefit to them is that they have some kind of assurity in terms of that more number of days they can work with us. Secondly, we do some kind of incentive structure for them linked to the productivity, even if it is for a 15 or 30 days period, so that they don't lose the focus and they see this as a time where they can get rewarded for their efficiency, for their productivity, etc., and make some extra money. At that level, for them, some extra 5,000, 10,000 rupees in a month in their pocket is a big thing. And that actually also drives many times their behavior. But we don't want to do it in a random manner. So we link it to some kind of team productivity or sometimes target based, etc., so that they all work as a team and try and deliver. We also do a lot of activities on a day-to-day basis. For example, champion of the week, champion of the day, giving a lot of R&R for them. Beyond the cash rewards, also some kind of certification, some kind of small quick rewards, etc. The whole idea is to keep them motivated at that juncture, because the business requirement is such that I have to provide this flexibility to my customers. I have to ramp up from say 200 to 1,000 in a very quick time, and then I have to further ramp it down back to 200 in a double quick time. So to do all this thing, there is a lot of work which is required to be done with this manpower.
Got it, sir. Got it. So coming to another important part, probably one of the most important part, tech, right? I would like to take it up with Ram because he comes from a core tech background, what I have seen from his profile. So as per my experience, and I think the August panel out here also be aligned on that, is the most part of the tech infrastructure, right, in e-commerce has come around the 2015 to 2017 kind of a phase, right? At least when it comes to India, right? So you have a pick to light, a put to light, the conveyor belts, right? AWS machines, the auto sortings, and blah blah blah. All those kind of things have come in that phase. Uske baad mein, post this 2017 to 18 phase, there has only been scale up of that infrastructure. There has not been no new technology which has been introduced into the system. Whereas if we see a North American market or even the Chinese market, right, they have gone for robotics, right, and mass usage of RFIDs, right? Even the cost of an RFID chip in India is almost like 55, 60 rupees. It's beyond, matlab, ho hi nahi sakta is cost, right? Again, when it comes to robotics, if you see like a Kiva system doing the work, right, in a very energy efficient way, completely dark warehouse, right? Not an iota of light out there, or andhere mein everybody is working. You need a night vision, Sony night vision to see how the Kiva systems work, and that's beyond right now in India. India is not even thinking in that direction. The Indian warehousing part, what I have seen. What do you feel is the reason for that? That the technology, the infrastructure part has not matured beyond that pick to light conveyor belt, and what could be done by the industry at this point of time?
Okay. So my take on this is why, compared to Western countries or other European markets where we are a little slower in adoption to technologies, we have a lot of human capital that comes economically, better or viable option as an alternative to automotive, right? Automatic warehousing, things like that. So right now, I think we are leveraging the human capital to do all of those things. But I believe over a period of time, like the premise of low prices, same day delivery, right? I don't think we can get away completely with manual labor, but I think to some extent of automation will also come. But I think the doing automation in a hyper local delivery within a dark store is very difficult because of the restrictions that you have, right? It's not so big, so you cannot have robots going here and there. It's purely human driven. But I think in the warehousing part of it, yes, there are a lot of players in India where they are providing automation, like grade A warehouses where automations are still there. And of course, part of it, Amazon, Flipkart, they are also doing automation to some extent. But my fundamental premise is that we are actively engaging the human capital, my view, right? In terms of, at least in the near term, to solve for some of the efficiencies. But long term, yes, I think it is a mix of both human labor and automation is what I would say, as compared to Western countries where I have seen Walmart warehouse or distribution center is completely automated. And I've seen partly automated also, right? Where you have robots going here and there. And it comes at a certain cost. You just need to figure out what is the cost efficiency between your fully automation and with human labor.
Got it, got it. I would like to take this question to Nagaraju, sir, being a veteran in the industry, who has seen this industry over a much longer duration, right? And how this industry has evolved. What would be your thoughts with respect to the next stage of evolution, which probably should come into the Indian logistics with respect to the technology?
Yeah, I would like to support what Ramkumar just now said, that I think for Indian context, still there is enough possibility in terms of increasing the efficiency of the overall operation by enabling the workers. Actually, I mean, the kind of operation that are there in a large warehouse are related to, incoming, then QC, and then put away. And then again, on the other side, you have to pick and then pack and all these things, right? If you really look at it, no, automation is one way one can do, but that's at a huge cost. But considering the Indian context where, we have reasonably, enough number of manpower available, I think the solution should be more, people who are enabled by technology. And that is happening. If I look at Big Basket itself, I think over a period of last 10 years, we have, year after year, we have done significant enhancements and small improvements in ensuring that the way the orders land and use of paper or remove use of paper, and then picking cart itself can have a tablet fixed on it, so that they don't have to, they can use both their hands in picking. I mean, like, there are tons of things which are innovatively can be done in terms of the overall operation. So my would be that there is still a lot of scope for it before you can go for completely reducing the manpower. I think manpower who are aided, supported by the technology for faster picking, there is enough and more scope. That's how I would say. And I think for Indian context, I think it is also important that we have to own the responsibility that we have to provide certain amount of jobs to people is in certain strata of society, especially when you look at you go to a outside in a village outside Bhiwandi, and then their land is taken away, and then you are setting a large warehouse, but you have some responsibility to the community also to provide jobs to those from those areas, hinterland. So therefore I would say there is a lot of scope available in enabling the workers with technology, and that's the way going forward. But however, having said, purely rote jobs, like for example, you have to sort some hundreds and thousands of packages on the outbound side and all that, where a human can, is a waste of his effort and resources, and he can really get tired. I think those are the areas where you should automate. You should automate those kind of areas. Whereas on many other areas within the warehouse, which require a human for sure, but he can be enabled with better and faster technology. That's how I would look at it.
Got it, sir. Great. So we are at the fag end of the discussions, right? And we'll keep around 10 minutes of time for the questionnaires. So I would like to go in a round robin fashion with respect to a concluding argument, right? And I would request the panel if we had a topic around the costing part of it, right? How to optimize cost and what would be different cost aspects for different smaller businesses to bigger businesses, how you structureize cost, one part of it. And the other part is obviously related to cost in a, in a opposite way with respect to how do you increase, be more efficient and be more green for the sustainability and scalability of the future generations, right? So keeping both these two aspects of the discussion, I would like to start with Sushil sir, then Ram Kumar, then Virat and Sarvat, and ending up with Nagaraju sir to provide concluding arguments. So Sushil sir, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I think I'll for my concluding remark, since the whole topic was related with the how the warehousing is growing with the advent of e-commerce, 3PL, etc. And I think one of the question which has been put up by the audience also is talking about how these two, 3PL and e-commerce are evolving the modern warehousing. So let me try and answer that. So obviously, one of the key growth driver has been the e-commerce growth within India, which has led to the growth of the warehousing. But to the surprise of everyone, if you really look at the last 2 years consumption or the warehousing which have been contracted, the 3PL has a higher share than even e-commerce. So 3PLs are really going very aggressively and building capacity pan-India basis to provide the optimal services to their end customer, etc. So if you look at even a 2021 data, etc., almost 31% share is from the 3PL, and maybe followed by the e-commerce, which is around 25% or so. The second change which is happening is the absorption of the grade A warehousing. From the old godown kind of concept, which was there 10, 15 years back, we kept on moving and improving on the warehousing structure, the facilities, etc. And today, I think almost like 2/3 to 70% warehousing which is getting created and getting leased is the grade A warehousing with almost like 12 to 15 meter height and FM2 flooring and all those kind of norms which are there. So that is one major change which is happening now. The whole implementation of GST is also helping this, because with this end users are trying to consolidate their overall nodes or the points, and that is helping in terms of creating larger infrastructure and larger shared facilities, etc. I mean, if I take the example of Mahindra Logistics itself, maybe 10 years back we were looking at 1 lakh square feet or 2 lakh square feet as our very large warehouses. Today we are contracting by millions. So 1 million facility, 1.5 million facility. So that has completely changed post GST scenario, and that is also in a big way changing the how the warehousing infrastructure is getting created inside the warehouse, apart from the grade A, etc. So we are talking about automation. We are talking about material handling equipments which can meet such a height requirement, etc. And that will bring down the per unit cost of operating. So the consolidation and then modernization with the automation, etc., is really helping us in terms of creating these facilities which are economically to operate.
Thanks a lot, sir. Ram, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I think we discussed this in pieces in the last 1 hour. I think my view is to move towards a service-based economy rather than having a capital intensive, right, for any B2C or D2C brand. So in that way, when a lot of 3PL players come into picture, your cost of production per unit comes down, and then you'll be able to scale up quickly and then still keep your cost at a nominal level, right? So that's my view, right? As we move towards a service-based economy, more in supply chain and logistics, where there are tons of providers that can provide unit cost at a lower price, you'll be definitely able to save cost, right, for any brands. So that's my view.
Thanks, Virat.
Yeah, so so what I would want to put forward is the 5 aspects to it. One is because we are talking about the e-commerce environment, and then how warehousing is getting into support. So I think there are 4-5 things which are mainly the contributor. One is my speed, another is reliability, and third is cost. And eventually the most important thing which should be coming up in the picture is the sustainability and people. So these 5 things, I think, should be in right balance, so that I mean, this is available for future also, right? So if my sustainability is going for toast, at a cost of low service or lesser reliability and lower or cheaper cost, then it will eventually not be a beneficial thing, right? And the most important piece around it is, which we've discussed in detail also, the people factor. So which Nagaraju sir also mentioned correctly, that we should be having a certain set of mix, so that I mean, we should give back something to the people also who are providing so much of services under this build, right? So my conclusion is to balance it off, all the 5 aspects, and then providing the complete services. Thanks.
Thanks. Sarvaj.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of build upon what Ramkumar also said, a service-based economy. I think it's important that in order to bring in efficiencies, a platform or a player kind of gets enough volume to be able to bring in those economies of scale, right? As I said before. So for me, it's important that we have in some way consolidation of all these demands happening, and that consolidated demand is being fulfilled by a very few supply chain players, so that they are able to give the best service quality and efficiency to the brands. And in order to ensure that the cost remains in check, that's also a very, very important aspect, right? Now, if you are looking at how do I kind of help build these in the coming future, one is definitely we need to create the physical infrastructure for this, where we can have multiple clients working from the same warehouse. We have multiple customers being taken care by the same last mile services, right? So those kind of structures needs to be built in. They've already started kicking in with the likes of Mahindra, DHL, and all of them are doing that for us. And the second important aspect, which probably still needs to be worked upon, is to create a technology layer that integrates all of this, right? There are technologies available in bits and pieces today, but honestly, I don't see one single platform that kind of caters to an end-to-end need of supply chain, right? And that makes the operations a bit complex, even for the service providers and also for the clients who are using these services. So yeah, I mean, my closing remark would be to ensure that we kind of, as much as possible, try to become a mobile network, of future, where from the same tower, multiple service providers are getting the facilities of signals, right? So I think that's the way we need to think of how supply chain should evolve in the future.
Plus one to that, Sarvaj. So we're concluding from Sushil sir before I go to Nagaraju sir.
Yeah, so I think I have already, talked about that, and I might take this opportunity to take one more question which has been put on the chat box, is how to select a 3PL industry for warehouse benefit, etc. What qualities should be seen? Obviously, I would like to say simple answer would be choose Mahindra Logistics, but jokes apart, a right way would be to first of all define what are your objectives. And once you are very clear about your objectives, then probably you should look at, so if your objective is that you need a reach, then you have to select a 3PL which has a pan-India reach. If you think that you want a single service provider, then you have to look at a 3PL who can provide you warehousing as well as the distribution services together as a single umbrella, rather than you trying to choose different service provider. If your ask is that I want a variable or output based kind of costing, then again you should look at a service provider who is willing to look at, rather than a fixed cost, is willing to say that, okay, I will operate on a, a multi-user facility and give you a pay-per-use kind of thing. So it all depends on what is your requirement, and then you should put all these parameters, and then select the different service provider, and then look at their capability, who fits in the best into that, and then at the end, obviously the commercial discussion, etc., will also play a very important role in terms of who is able to provide this thing. But two more things which are not a direct impact on commercial, which I think people should keep in mind, is what is the futuristic outlook of a 3PL. Are they, for example, looking into the sustainable operation, which I think some of my esteemed panelists also talked about? So are they, looking in terms of reducing the carbon footprint? Are their warehouses are green warehouses? Are they looking for IGBC certification? Are they doing the water conservation and all other things? Because today you may feel that, okay, is it important for me or not? But I can guarantee that in future and in long term, those things will become very, very important. So please also keep in mind some of those criterias which are not today look like a direct cost impact, but from a futuristic point of view are very, very important criteria.
Thanks a lot. And concluding remark from Nagaraj, sir, specifically focusing on the sustainability part, right? Sushil sir has told about IGBP certification, energy conservation. Probably the packaging part is also important, right? A lot of rules and has come into the packaging part. What would be your concluding remark in terms of the sustainability, making this ecosystem more sustainable for the future generation?
Yeah, absolutely. See, one thing is very clear going forward, as in fact, Sushil has very nicely summarized. Sustainability is something which is going to be a very, very key factor going forward. One is, when we look at our own journey in Big Basket, in fact, more and more customers are telling us, are giving suggestions on how, especially on packaging, what is that we can do, and whether, we can do a more sustainable method of packaging and so on. See, one is customers are becoming very aware. And secondly, all over the world, there is, I think, slowly becoming a better understanding of the issues that the mankind is facing due to either climate changes or this or that, due to excessive, use of fossils and so on. So I think going forward, maybe within the next 1 decade, there'll be more and more, impetus to sustainability efforts. In fact, just to tell you, we are Big Basket is one of the, I suppose we are one of the, few players where all our warehouses, across the country, we have 65 places where we have warehouses, and many of the warehouses in the metros are very, very big, up to 2 lakh square feet. All of them have solar panels on top. So fundamentally, even 4 years earlier, we have decided that we are going to do it. So that one is, of course, obviously there is an energy saving. We can definitely use, especially most of the warehouses work in the night also. We have to take the grid power in any case. So at least a portion of it can be, managed by generating powerhouses. That we have done. And secondly, on the EVs also, for example, 30% of our fleet, both in terms of last mile vehicles as well as the bikes, 30% is already electric. And then those are big numbers. When I say 30% of some 3,000 vans is electric, and 30% of almost 10,000 bikes are electric. So we have taken the lead, and now we are also realized that these are some of the efforts. We cannot simply try to say that somebody has to come with the electric bike. No, we have to ensure certain charging also. So we are providing charging infrastructure. In all our hubs, in all our DCs, we have charging infrastructure for enough and more number of bikes and enough and more number of three-wheelers which are electric. So you had to sometimes take the lead. And I think that is where Sushil was also talking about. Even the 3PLs are also taking the lead in some cases. I'm aware that they are providing charging infrastructure. They are moving into very clear, sustainable efforts in terms of both water conservation, trash management, using environment friendly packaging, etc. Right. So these are all efforts. Some of the corporate, responsible corporates like Big Basket, Tatas, we have very clearly signed up that we are going to do year-on-year improvement in many of these sustainable efforts. And the important thing is that society is becoming more knowledgeable, and even our customers would also love it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, everybody. Taking back the discussion to Dr. Bhanumati. So we have tried to cover up the questionnaires which have come in our discussion process itself. And I enjoyed the discussion, right? So what would be your concluding remark and how did you see it? You are on mute, ma'am.
Thank you so much for the wonderful session. We come to the conclusion of this session, and we have yet another interesting session to go, which starts at 3:45 p.m. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.